So if I was really doing this, then this piece of paper would be coated with cyanotite, with salt, with platinum, palladium, or it would be a piece of polymer. And on top of that, I would put the thin piece of transparency, which I use to print my image on. And then on top of that, you're putting your stouffer. And the idea is that you want to find your base exposure, but you don't want to see a difference between exposure of where the paper doesn't have the transparency on. So that's what you're looking for. You're looking for where you can't see a distinct line. So when you look at the cyanotype, you can see it on 8, you can see it on 7, but you can't actually see it on 6. There's no line there whatsoever. And so that's your exposure when you use the calibration tool. That is the number that you're putting in there. And it's the same for another process like the platinum and palladium. You'd be putting in 5 because you can slightly see it on 6, you can definitely see it on 7, you're going all the way up, 14, 16, all those numbers, you can definitely see where there's a difference, and you don't want that difference. And so your exposure is 5, and that is what you'd put in. And after you've done that, when you've found your actual timings, that's when you want to do these squares that I always do. And with these squares, you're looking for a really lovely black to white or blue to white in a graduation. So how to do that is you can use numerous pieces of software. This one that I'm showing you, you download 2 files. And if you look, you're downloading this EDN RGB 256.tiff. That's the file that you want to download, and that's the one that you're going to print out on the transparency and expose. You can see this one isn't great. It's a little bit dark at the top and doesn't have the perfect really exposure, but this is what the curve gives you. When you re-upload it, you're either going to use from a scan, or if you've got using a piece of software called a spectrometer, and that will count the tiny squares and take a reading for that, and then you're going to upload that. But you can just scan in. I'd love to upgrade to the spectrometer, but at the moment I'm just scanning in, and that will return a curve for you to use. And so what again then you want to do is you want to put the curve on top of the downloaded square files that you've got, and then when you're putting your curve on, you should be able to then see the difference that it's making, because what it's done is it's calibrated for you, and so it will lift up the blacks a little bit and pull down the whites in what you can see of what I've got. And that's how I do it. I play around and make sure I've got a really decent set of squares from 0 to 255. And if you're not happy with that, I quite often just alter the curve myself, but you can re-upload it into this piece of software and that does it for you. Another piece of software you can use is throb. That does a very similar thing, and you download a plugin for Photoshop. And then the third one that I've used is a book by Clay Hammond, and he explains another way of doing calibration, but this calibration is specifically for photopolymer, whereas the other two, the negative one and the throb one, they're both good for any type of alternative process. So these are very basic videos, and I've never pretended them to be anything else, but I do think they're quite informative, and I hope they're informative for you. But if you could like and subscribe, that would be super helpful. Thanks.